After everything that happened aboard the ship, Desa had only one goal left: to find his missing younger brother, but he had no idea that from the moment they first met, he had already caught the attention of the most dangerous person on Nachino Island. Behind Karl's gentle smile lay a secret even more terrifying than the legends surrounding the Sherlock family's monster. As for Karl, Desa was not just the man who saved him. He had become a one-of-a-kind target, and on their very first night on the island, the chase would begin where the line between hunter and prey slowly started to reverse. The roar from deep within the forest made Desa change direction and charge into the darkness, but what he found was not a wild beast. It was Karl overpowering a prisoner. The terrified man screamed, calling Karl a monster. Karl simply smiled, almost amused by the man's panic. The prisoner struggled desperately, insisting that Karl had already taken down his companions. Karl remained perfectly calm, as though it were all just part of a game. No matter how many curses or threats were thrown at him, Karl's smile only grew brighter. Then he slowly raised his knife, ready to end it. Just then, a faint sound echoed through the forest. Karl immediately turned around and found Desa standing behind him. For the first time, Karl's smile froze. In an instant, he switched to the expression of a frightened, innocent victim. Seizing the opportunity, the prisoner lunged at him. Karl stumbled back, dodging the attack while desperately calling Desa's name for help. His pleading eyes were convincing enough to fool almost anyone, but Desa did not move. He answered with only one cold sentence: "If you walk into danger, you face the consequences." Even so, Desa's suspicions continued to grow. Earlier, Karl had handled a grown man with surprising ease. It was obvious he was still hiding something. Desa turned and walked away, continuing to follow the trail of the mysterious roar. The moment Desa disappeared from sight, Karl burst into laughter. His helpless mask vanished in an instant. He knocked the prisoner to the ground, determined to deal with the last witness. Karl was already convinced that Desa would be his next target. But just as the knife was about to come down, a thunderous roar suddenly tore through the night. A gigantic beast burst out of the darkness and charged straight at Karl. For the first time, genuine surprise appeared on Karl's face. At the very last moment, an arrow sliced through the air. Desa appeared and brought down the beast right in front of Karl. Karl stared at Desa in stunned silence. While the real hunt was only just beginning, the moment Desa saved Karl from the beast's jaws, Karl immediately threw his arms around him as if he had found his only source of safety. Behind them, the surviving prisoner could only tremble, repeatedly whispering one word: "Monster." In complete desperation, the man suddenly charged at both of them. Desa reacted instantly, pulling Karl out of the way before ending the threat with a single strike. Once everything finally settled, Desa called for Karl to come back, but Karl's expression suddenly changed as the scent of blood filled the air. His crimson eyes sharpened, his heartbeat raced, and his self-control began to slip. Before Desa could understand what was happening, Karl suddenly rushed toward him. Acting on pure instinct, Karl bit into Desa's neck, sending both of them to the ground. Desa was stunned. He tried to push Karl away, but the young man's strength was far greater than his fragile appearance suggested. Karl finally pulled back, yet his eyes never left the small mark he had just made. That single taste sent a burning sensation through his entire body. Karl clutched himself, trembling as he struggled to stay in control. Then a piercing scream echoed through the forest before he completely lost consciousness. By sunrise, Karl woke up in his familiar bed, as though the previous night had been nothing but a dream. Yet the memory of Desa's blood remained vivid in his mind. Karl quietly laughed to himself, growing more excited the more he remembered. In his eyes, no prey had ever been this fascinating. It was not only the scent of Desa's blood, even the strange feeling of being close to him refused to leave Karl's thoughts. For the first time, Karl felt a thrill that was completely beyond his control. He was certain he would never find another target as captivating as Desa, and he had no intention of ending this hunt anytime soon. Karl decided that winning was no longer what he wanted. He wanted to savor every step of the chase. The thought alone was enough to make him smile uncontrollably. Just then, the bedroom door slowly opened. Desa appeared in the doorway, and calmly asked if Karl was awake. Karl immediately hid his true emotions and put on his usual harmless smile. But behind that innocent expression, the crimson glow in his eyes had never truly faded. Desa still had no idea just how dangerous the predator standing before him really was. As for Karl, he had officially chosen Desa as his most special target, and from that moment on, the game between prey and predator truly began. Karl immediately rushed over to check on Desa, but behind that smile was a secret no one knew. The moment he noticed the mark on Desa's neck, a flash of longing crossed his eyes before he quickly hid it. Desa instinctively kept his distance as memories of the previous night's strange events came flooding back. Before he could ask a single question, Karl suddenly staggered and collapsed right in front of him. Desa quickly caught him and checked his condition. For a brief moment, Karl's pulse was so faint that Desa thought he had died. Then, just seconds later, Karl's breathing unexpectedly returned. Even so, Desa became more convinced than ever that the young man before him was far from ordinary. He decided to carry Karl back to the shelter, though his mind remained filled with suspicion. Desa told himself it would be best not to get too involved with someone carrying so many secrets. When Karl woke up, He immediately asked what had happened the night before, as if he remembered nothing at all. Desa carefully studied every expression before asking whether Karl had truly forgotten everything. Karl claimed the last thing he remembered was being chased by a monster before Desa rescued him. Everything after that was a complete blank. Lowering his head, Karl apologized, worried that he had caused Desa more trouble. Deep down, however, he was only wondering whether this lie would be enough to hide the truth. Desa explained that Karl had simply collapsed unexpectedly and he had brought him back to safety. Karl quickly made up a strange illness that caused him to lose consciousness whenever he became emotionally overwhelmed. He even pleaded with Desa to keep it a secret, saying he needed money for treatment. Desa remained silent, clearly unconvinced by the explanation. Karl continued playing the role of a helpless victim, hoping to win Desa's sympathy. The atmosphere suddenly grew tense as Desa slowly drew his dagger. The blade swept past Karl's face, slicing off a lock of hair in a single motion. Desa looked him straight in the eyes and asked a question that threatened to tear every lie apart. Then, was your violent behavior because of that illness too? While Desa continued to suspect Karl, a mysterious force elsewhere had also begun taking an interest in him. Duke's steward quietly stroked the white tiger, Fiosa, as though everything was unfolding exactly as he expected. The moment Karl's name was mentioned, Fiosa reacted in an unusual way. An urgent report was quickly delivered to the Duke. He learned that Karl had entered the survival trial and had encountered Fiosa before ever meeting him. Back in the room, Desa's question left Karl completely stunned. Karl stared at his own hands as if he could not believe he had ever harmed anyone. He forced himself to look panicked, insisting that everything only happened when his mysterious condition took over. But Desa still was not convinced. Without warning, he forced Karl down, making him face the truth. The cold blade stopped just inches from Karl, yet there was not the slightest trace of fear in Karl's eyes. Instead, he quietly savored the feeling of being pushed into a corner. In Karl's mind, only one thought remained: to feel Desa's touch one more time. Desa coldly concluded that the entire situation might have been carefully staged from the very beginning. He even suspected that Karl had approached him on purpose. Karl immediately denied it, and continued playing the role of a helpless victim. He argued that if he had truly planned everything, he would not have collapsed right afterward. But deep inside, Karl continued hiding, the predator instinct growing stronger within him. In a desperate move, he deliberately leaned toward Desa's blade. If risking his own life was the only way to earn Desa's trust, Karl was willing to do it. Desa hesitated, shaken for the first time by Karl's strange reaction. Just as the tension reached its peak, an alarm echoed throughout the mining camp. Every prisoner was immediately escorted to a newly opened mining site. Desa walked away, leaving behind one cold sentence. He still did not believe a single word Karl had said. Before them stood a massive mine filled with an eerie atmosphere. Hidden in the darkness, something resembling a giant eye silently watched everyone. The crack of a whip instantly silenced the entire crowd. The overseer announced that every tunnel could hide either treasure or monsters, and the fastest way to find out was to send someone in first. His eyes quickly settled on Karl and Desa, the two prisoners with the special numbers. Without hesitation, the guard seized Karl despite his desperate struggle. Karl cried out for Desa, but no one answered. With one powerful shove, Karl disappeared into the endless darkness of the mine. The entrance to the mine slammed shut, leaving Karl alone in the darkness. The overseer's laughter echoed through the tunnels as if they were waiting for a brutal show to begin. Karl slowly got to his feet, forcing himself to stay calm in the unfamiliar surroundings. He called out loudly, but only the cold echo answered him. Then heavy footsteps began echoing from deep within the darkness. With every step, the air grew heavier. A massive shadow emerged right in front of Karl. Its thunderous roar shook the entire cavern. For a moment, Karl thought this was the end. Then a familiar voice suddenly broke the silence. Duke's steward appeared and calmly ordered Fiosa to stand down. The great white tiger obeyed immediately. Karl rushed over, wrapped his arms around Fiosa, then happily ran to his older brother. After a brief moment of fear, his usual cheerful smile returned. Steward smiled and asked whether Karl had enjoyed the hunt he had prepared. Karl replied that the prey on the island was certainly interesting, but seeing his brother again made him even happier. Steward quickly noticed that Fiosa had not eaten as much as usual. He casually mentioned that Fiosa and Karl had already crossed paths the previous night. The question made Karl pause for just a moment. He immediately changed the subject, trying to hide the truth. Karl willingly offered a little of his own blood to feed Fiosa, calming the beast. But Steward continued watching in silence, sensing that Karl was hiding something. Karl knew the truth about the previous night could never reach his brother. Suddenly, old memories came rushing back like a nightmare that had never truly faded. As a child, Karl had once watched helplessly as powerful nobles laughed at another person's tragedy. The laughter, the crashing objects, and the chaos left him with no choice but to retreat deeper into the shadows. Then every cold gaze slowly turned toward the place where Karl was hiding, and in that moment, The past Karl had buried for so long finally began to resurface. As the nobles' banquet began, Duke Steward remained perfectly calm, as if everything were unfolding according to plan. After everyone had left, he walked past the pool of blood and made his way toward Karl. It was the first time the two brothers had truly faced each other after years apart. Steward gently called Karl's name and patted his head like the perfect older brother. But in Karl's eyes, all he could see was the image of his late mother. Steward immediately dismissed that memory and led Karl out of the room. The past faded away, replaced once again by Steward's carefully crafted kindness. Karl happily accepted his favorite candy from his brother. That smile lasted only until Steward casually mentioned Prisoner 001. The atmosphere changed instantly. Karl tried to hide his uneasiness, but every question pushed him further into a corner. While tending to Karl's wound, Steward quietly studied even the smallest reaction. Every word felt more like a test than genuine concern. The more Karl avoided the subject, the more convinced Steward became that Karl and Desa were hiding something. The pain from Karl's wound slowly began to overwhelm him. His face flushed, and his breathing became noticeably heavier. Steward quickly realized that Karl's blood craving was beginning to return. But this time, there was not a single prey nearby. Steward's gaze slowly shifted toward himself. That single thought was enough to leave Karl speechless. Karl remembered how Steward had often used kindness to keep him under his control. Every gift had always come with a painful price. Then Steward unexpectedly mentioned a friend Karl had once cherished. A single press of a button turned that memory into a living nightmare. A desperate cry for help echoed right before Karl's eyes. Steward simply smiled, as though everything were nothing more than a game. And this time, he placed the choice in Karl's hands, as if forcing him to decide someone else's fate. Karl's secret has finally begun to surface. But just how terrifying is the secret behind the Sherlock family? Share your theories in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapters.